The gate buzzed at 2:11 in the morning. On the security monitor, in the snow, stood my mother, my sister, and her husband, shivering and begging me to open up. I had moved, changed my number, cut all ties. Yet they found me. I hit record, opened the two-way audio, and said, "What signal did you track to get here? My name is Lila Sanchez. I am 34 years old, and I build fortresses, by trade. I am a security systems architect, by necessity. I own Sentinel North Integrations, a boutique firm that specializes in failure analysis and system hardening. We don't just sell cameras, we design ecosystems. We find the cracks in a client's defense before anyone else can. My job is to anticipate the worst possible human behavior and render it impotent. It turns out, I was very good at my job and very bad at applying its principles to my own life. I left Cedar Heights, Ohio, because the breach was already inside the house. The failure wasn't technological, it was biological. It was family. Marin Ridge, California, was the precise opposite of Ohio. Ohio was damp, flat, and suffocatingly familiar. Marin Ridge was dry, vertical, and aggressively anonymous. I didn't buy a home. I acquired a defensible position. The structure itself is unassuming from the road. All clean architectural lines, native grasses, and neutral colors, tucked into a slope that provides excellent strategic oversight. But the materials are specific. The walls are double-studded, set 24 inches on center, and filled with dense acoustic insulation. They are rated to STC 65. I cannot hear the wind, the occasional neighbor, or the distant highway. More importantly, no one outside can hear me. The silence is a physical thing, a barrier. The perimeter is the first line of defense, and it is my specialty, my company, under a subcontractor's name, installed the system. We used 4K resolution thermal cameras at all four corners of the property line, synced with analytic software. They don't just record motion, they analyze gait, cross-reference heat signatures, and differentiate between a deer and a person. The front gate is a solid steel plate, painted to look like wood, and it operates on a closed-loop system. Access is granted by a license plate recognition camera linked to a whitelist. If your plate isn't on that list, the gate does not open, period. The video doorbell, a custom build, runs through my own internal server, not a third-party cloud service. I alone control the data. The driveway was the part I obsessed over. Before the concrete was poured, I had them bury seismic sensors every 10 feet, running the full length of the approach. They are calibrated to distinguish between a 50-pound delivery drone, a 5,000-pound passenger vehicle, and a 180-pound human walking. I know the weight, speed, and direction of anything that approaches my fortress. It is a digital moat. Moving was the easy part. Erasing myself was the real work. The day the Ohio house closed, I executed the protocol. I terminated my primary cell number, a number I'd had for 15 years. I let my personal email accounts saturate with spam and then deleted them. My social media profiles scrubbed of photos, purged of contacts, deactivated, and scheduled for permanent deletion 30 days later. I am a ghost in the digital system. The only lifeline I left was the one they wouldn't know how to use a legal mailbox. It's a private box registered to my attorney's office in San Francisco, under the name of my LLC. It exists only for service of process and corporate filings. It is not for birthday cards or weeping apologies. The silence I had engineered was vast, and the only way to fill it was with work. Sentinel North was bidding on 2 major contracts, and I buried myself in the proposals. The first was a full security retrofit for St. Jude's Regional Hospital. They had shrinkage in their pharmaceutical storage and a terrifying gap in their maternity ward access control. I spent 12 hours designing a system using biometric locks tied to active staff schedules. The second was a penetration test for a local bank's new digital infrastructure. They thought they were secure. I gave my best analyst a bonus to prove them wrong. He found 3 critical vulnerabilities in less than 2 days. My days became 16 hours long, filled with blueprints, vulnerability assessments, code reviews, and client calls. I analyzed threat vectors for the bank while meticulously ignoring the primary threat vector I had just surgically excised from my life. Work was clean. Work had rules. You build a wall. You test the wall. The wall holds. People were not like that. As I worked, a small, cold part of my brain was listening. I had left Cedar Heights. I had vanished, and the silence from my family was absolute. In the first week, I expected the frantic calls to my old number, the angry texts. I checked the dead account's voicemail portal. Nothing. In the second week, I expected the manipulative emails, the probing of old, forgotten social media accounts. Perhaps a message relayed through a mutual friend. Nothing. Now, entering the third week, the silence had become its own answer. They had not called. They had not messaged. They had not inquired with my old office. They did not care where I was, only what I provided. Their lack of concern was the final, brutal confirmation I needed. The emptiness was startling. It was the feeling of surgically removing a tumor and realizing the space left behind doesn't even ache. It just feels quiet, hollow. The quiet only made me double down on my security. The house in Marin Ridge wasn't purchased by Lila Sanchez. Lila Sanchez, according to public records, didn't live anywhere. The property was owned by Marin Ridge Holdings, LLC. The LLC was registered using my attorney as the agent, and its mailing address was a virtual box in Nevada. I had built a corporate shield around my physical one. Inside the house, in the foundation-bolted, 2-hour fireproof safe, went the evidence. I didn't move it to forget. I moved it to preserve. I am a systems architect. I believe in data. I believe in logs. Inside that safe sits a stack of hard drives. On them, every bank transfer I ever made to them, every scanned copy of a check, every text message screenshot where a request for help became a demand. Every email. I had preserved every piece of financial documentation from the past. It was an archive of the exploitation, neatly organized, time-stamped, and ready. With the house secure and the digital walls built, I enabled a feature on my system I usually reserve for high-risk corporate clients, the perimeter ping. It's an active scanner, separate from the Wi-Fi, that detects and logs the MAC addresses of any unknown Bluetooth or Wi-Fi-enabled devices like smartphones or modern car fobs that linger near my gate or property line for more than 60 seconds. It's an early warning system. If someone is casing the joint, I know they're there before they even touch the bell. My new life settled into a rhythm. Work until midnight, make chamomile tea, and then, the ritual, the nightly security audit. I would sit at my command desk, a triple monitor setup that mirrored the one at Sentinel North, and I would review the day's logs. I checked the logs from the license plate recognition camera, just my own car, and the approved delivery services. I reviewed the thermal scans from the perimeter, just raccoons and the occasional coyote. I checked the perimeter ping log. It was always empty. The system was clean. The silence was intact. The fortress was holding. This was night 21 since the move. 3 weeks of absolute, uninterrupted peace. I sat down with my tea, my eyes heavy from reviewing the hospital blueprints. I pulled up the system dashboard, and my heart stopped. The perimeter ping log, usually a pristine, empty white box, was lit up with red alerts, not one, but three. 3 distinct, unknown device signatures, logged at 2:07 in the morning. They weren't just passing by. They were stationary. They were at the gate. My fatigue evaporated, replaced by a cold surge of adrenaline. My training took over. I bypassed the overview and patched directly into the primary gate camera. The 4K optic with the best low-light performance. The rain here wasn't like Ohio snow. It was a cold, driving, miserable downpour. The infrared filter clicked on, painting the world in stark shades of monochrome gray. And there they were, 3 figures, drenched, huddled together against the steel plate of my gate, seeking pathetic shelter from the wind. I hit the digital zoom, the image sharpened, the analytic software locking onto their faces, compensating for the rain. My mother, Lorraine, my sister, Brielle, and her husband, Gavin. They looked destroyed. Their clothes were soaked through, plastered to their skin. Brielle was rubbing her arms, her face pale and ugly with tears. Gavin was staring up, not at the camera lens, he wouldn't know where it was, but at the house, his expression frantic and desperate. My mother was the one pounding on the intercom panel, her hand blurring in the low light, the sound thankfully muted by my soundproof walls. They stood there, freezing in my manufactured fortress, and I felt nothing but the cold glass of the monitor under my fingertips. This was not a family reunion. This was a system breach. To understand the breach, you have to analyze the vulnerabilities they exploited for years. My family of origin consisted of 4 people, though only 3 of them ever operated as a cohesive unit. There was my mother, Lorraine. She was a woman who believed her comfort was a debt the world owed her, and her children were her primary collection agents. There was my father, Arthur. He was a good man in the way a sturdy, worn-out piece of furniture is good. He was reliable, present, and entirely passive. He owned a small, perpetually struggling sandwich shop, a place that smelled of baking bread and vinegar. He worked from 4 in the morning until 7 at night. His exhaustion was the wallpaper of my childhood, and it made him blind. He trusted Lorraine. He adored Brielle. He was proud of me, but in a distant way, like I was a complex equation he admired but never tried to solve. Then there was my sister, Brielle, 2 years younger. She had perfected the art of strategic incompetence. She was the creative one, the sensitive one, which, in our family's language, meant she was not expected to hold a job, manage a budget, or face a single consequence. And finally, there was Gavin Pierce, her husband. Gavin worked in corporate finance. He had the polished veneer of a mid-level executive and the ethics of a jackal. He didn't just marry Brielle, he acquired her, seeing her as an entry point into a family with a perceived asset. That asset was me. The pattern was established early. Lila's in tech. Lila's company is doing so well. Lila is rich. Lila can cover it. It started small. A phone bill here, a car repair there. But it escalated, as all unchecked system failures do. When I sold my first major security patent, the requests became assumptions. I have every transaction logged. In the last 24 months alone, the total bleed was $62,300. It was $9,000 for the new roof on their house, a house I did not live in. It was $6,400 for the central air conditioning unit because, as Lorraine said, the summers are getting just unbearable. It was $12,000 for the emergency dental surgery for Brielle, which turned out to be a full set of cosmetic veneers. It was a $5,000 loan to Gavin for a can't-miss investment opportunity, which I never saw again, and it was the all-inclusive Caribbean cruise for the 4 of them. A last real family vacation before your father's legs get bad. That was nearly $30,000. I paid. I paid because it was easier than the fight, the guilt, the accusations that I was forgetting where I came from. The irony was their complete disdain for the source of the money. My work, Sentinel North Integrations, was a hobby. "It's sweet you have your little camera company, honey," my mother would say at dinner, patting my hand. "But all that wire, it's not a real career, is it? Not like Gavin's?" Gavin, who at that very moment was probably calculating the interest on the money I'd just loaned him. The system didn't just fail, it was actively sabotaged. The first crack I saw, the one I should have acted on immediately, was on their back porch. It was a Sunday. I had come over to fix their router. My role as family tech support was non-negotiable. They thought I was inside, rebooting the modem. I was on the porch, checking the external wiring. I heard my mother and Brielle through the screen door. Their voices were low, conspiratorial. "He's projecting a huge bonus for the 4th quarter, Brielle whispered. "Gavin says if we can just get her to cover the balloon payment on the car, we'll be set." "She's been tight lately," Lorraine said. "She keeps asking for, invoices." She said the word like it was an obscenity. "Just tell her dad's stress is bad again," Brielle said, her voice bored. "That always works. We just need to get this one last payment, and then we're done. Gavin's plan handles the rest. Done with what I thought. Handles what rest I stayed quiet. I finished fixing the router and left. I didn't ask about the balloon payment. I just started watching. The second crack was Gavin. He had corners of the house, like spiders. He always cornered me when my father was at the shop and my mother was resting. "Lila," he said one afternoon, leaning against the kitchen counter, stirring a drink. "We need to talk about your mother's estate, as a family. Mom's fine, Gavin. It's not about her health, it's about efficiency, tax optimization." He smiled. That polished, empty finance smile. "Right now, you're listed in the will. It's problematic. From a tax perspective, you're in a high bracket. If, God forbid, something happens, your inheritance is going to get hit. Hard." "What are you suggesting?" "I've been advising Lorraine," he said, "that the smart play is to update the will, move the assets solely to Betrayal. She's in a much lower bracket. It minimizes the tax burden for everyone. It just simplifies things. We can always make sure you're, taken care of informally. It's just cleaner on paper." He was advising my mother to disinherit me to save me money. He was promising to take care of me with my own inheritance. I looked at him, at this man who had never built a single thing in his life, and I just nodded. "I'll think about it. Gavin, thanks for the financial advice." The third crack, the one that split the foundation wide open, was the GoFundMe. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent me the link, with a simple message, "This is awful. I'm so sorry. Praying for Lorraine." I clicked. The page was titled, "Lorraine's Brave Battle." It was organized by Brielle Pierce. The text was a masterpiece of emotional extortion. It spoke of my mother, Lorraine, battling a rare aggressive neurological disorder. It described her mounting medical bills, an inability to get the experimental treatment she desperately needs. It painted a picture of a family on the brink of ruin, fighting for their matriarch's life. It featured a photo of my mother from 5 years ago, looking pale after a bout of the flu, repurposed as evidence of her brave fight. The goal was $50,000. They had already raised $19,000. I checked my mother's health insurance portal. Her last visit was a routine checkup. She was, as they say, fit as a fiddle. It was a complete fabrication, a scam. Brielle was using a fake illness to solicit money from strangers, leveraging our family name. I saw donations from old high school friends, from neighbors, from members of their church. I didn't confront them. I documented. I saved a PDF of the entire campaign. I archived the donor list. I was no longer a daughter. I was an investigator. The final, catastrophic failure came from an old college friend, Sarah, who worked in risk management at a regional bank. She called me on my work line. Her voice hushed. "Lila, this is off the record. Completely." "What's wrong?" "Sarah, are your parents refinancing their house?" "What? No. Why?" "Because," she said, "an application for a home equity line of credit just crossed my desk for underwriting. It's for your parents' address in Cedar Heights, $150,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible. My dad's shop barely breaks even. They'd never qualify." "They wouldn't," Sarah agreed. "But the application has a co-signer with an 810 credit score, a high six-figure income, and a digital signature that matches her driver's license." "Who?" "You, Lila." I hung up the phone. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I went to my fireproof safe, the old one, in Ohio, and pulled out the family file. I found the power of attorney document Lorraine had asked me to sign 3 years ago. "Just in case, honey, for medical decisions." I scanned it. Then I pulled the metadata. I cross-referenced the digital signature on the POA with the bank's file, which Sarah had discreetly mis-emailed to me. It was a perfect match. They had used the signature from the medical POA to forge a financial one, but I'm a systems architect. I don't just look at the signature, I look at the logs. I still had administrative access to their home network. I had set it up. After all, I pulled the router's access logs for the date the HELOC was filed. There was a specific login to the bank's portal, followed by a login to a secure email service, all originating from an IP address I didn't recognize. It took me 10 minutes to trace it. It wasn't their home network. It was the guest Wi-Fi at Gavin's corporate office downtown. I kept digging. I used my skills to access the shared drive they all used, the one I paid for. Tucked in a folder mislabeled Vacation Pics was a subfolder. Inside scans of my driver's license, my social security card, and a saved email thread between Brielle and Gavin. Brielle: "Are you sure this will work? What if she finds out?" Gavin: "It's digitally signed. It's ironclad. The bank just sees her income and her credit. They don't see her. We pull the equity, pay off our high-interest debt, and use the rest for the down payment on the new build. By the time she ever figures it out, the money will be long gone. She'll have to pay it or let her parents' house go into foreclosure. She won't let that happen." They were going to steal $150,000 using my credit and leverage my father's home as collateral, assuming I would be forced to clean up their mess. That was the moment I stopped being Lila Sanchez, the daughter. I became Lila Sanchez, the CEO of Sentinel North. I called my lawyer. I called my bank. I placed an immediate freeze on all 3 of my credit bureaus. I filed a report for identity theft, and I initiated the plan to liquidate my Ohio assets and disappear. My father, Arthur, knew nothing. He was at the shop, from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m., slicing turkey and worrying about the cost of rye bread. He was a good man, but his goodness was a tool the others used against him, and against me. He trusted his wife. He believed his youngest daughter could do no wrong. His willful ignorance was the unlocked door they walked through every single time. I was 2 days from closing on the Ohio house, my exit plan in its final stage. When the last text message came through from Brielle, it was the final straw. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. "Hey, need you to transfer $15,000 by Friday. The property tax bill is due before the holiday, and Gavin says we need to pay it off to get the new loan approved. Just send it to Mom's account. The rest of the family will handle the paperwork." The rest of the family. I looked at the text. I saw the arrogance, the assumption, the utter lack of awareness. They were trying to extract $15,000 from me to pay the taxes on a house they were actively trying to steal from under my father's feet, using my own forged signature. I did not reply. I put the phone on my desk. I picked up my suitcase. I walked out of my house in Ohio, got in my car, and drove west until the state line disappeared in my rearview mirror, and I never looked back. Until now. Until night 21. Until they were standing at my gate, in the rain, pressing the buzzer, demanding I let them into the new fortress I had built specifically to keep them out. The discovery of the home equity loan application was not a moment of emotional collapse. It was the start of a quiet, cold, procedural war, fought not with shouting matches, but with bylaws, affidavits, and firewalls. My family specialized in emotional manipulation. I specialized in system integrity. My system had been breached. It was time to isolate the threat, patch the vulnerabilities, and deploy the countermeasures. My work began before my car was even packed for California. This was a forensic disassembly of my life. My first call was to my corporate attorney, Karis. I didn't tell him the whole story. I didn't need to. I told him I required a new corporate shield for a West Coast acquisition, optimized for absolute anonymity. He was expensive, and he was worth it. He created Marin Ridge Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware, managed through a proxy agent in Nevada. When I purchased the property in Marin Ridge, my name, Lila Sanchez, appeared on exactly 0 public documents. The chain of ownership was a legal maze designed to cost $10,000 in billable hours to navigate. I was a ghost in the county registrar's office. While the LLC was being formed, I secured my communication lines. I opened a private mailbox at a third-party facility, one that required biometric access. This, registered to the LLC, became my only physical address. I systematically filed do not solicit requests with the major data brokers. Gavin worked in finance. He knew how to use skip tracing services and background check databases. I was poisoning the well. If he searched for Lila Sanchez, California, he would find nothing but dead ends and error messages. Next, I needed unimpeachable proof of the forgery. I retained a court-certified forensic document examiner based in Texas. I sent him the original medical power of attorney they had tricked me into signing 3 years prior and the digital file of the bank application Sarah had sent me. His report came back 3 days later. It was clinical. It was beautiful. It confirmed the signature on the HELOC application was a transplanted digital image, not a live signature, lifted directly from the medical document. He identified metadata artifacts proving the file had been manipulated on a device that did not belong to me, at a time that matched the IP logs from Gavin's office. This report was the legal weapon I needed. With the breach confirmed, I cataloged the damage. For 48 straight hours, I did nothing but data entry. I am a systems architect. I believe in logs. I exported every text message from Betrayal, every email from Gavin, every voicemail from Lorraine. I cross-referenced them with my bank statements. I built a timeline. It was not a scrapbook. It was an indictment. Date June 4th. Request Betrayal. Text. Amount $9,000. Stated reason. Emergency roof repair. Date August 10th. Request Lorraine. Call. Amount $6,400. Stated reason. New AC. Dad's health. Date December 2nd. Request Gavin. Email. Amount $5,000. Stated reason. Short-term investment. Double return. Date February 9th. Request Betrayal. Call. Amount $12,000. Stated reason. Emergency dental surgery. I listed every single withdrawal, every family expense they had pushed onto me. The list, when printed, was 7 pages long, single-spaced. The total was $62,300, and at the bottom, I added the new entry, attempted theft $150,000, method forgery, identity theft. Before I even hired the analyst, I had locked my entire financial identity. I placed a permanent credit freeze with all 3 major bureaus: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. This meant no one, not Gavin, not Betrayal, not even me, could open a new line of credit in my name without an elaborate multi-step PIN verification. The gates were frozen shut. The next step was the hardest. I took the analyst's report, the 7-page timeline, and the IP logs from Gavin's office, and I walked into the Cedar Heights Police Precinct. The desk sergeant looked bored. "What's the problem?" "Miss, I need to file a report for felony identity theft and attempted wire fraud." He sighed, his pen hovering over the form. "Is this a domestic dispute? Your husband?" "It's my family," I said, my voice flat. "And it's not a dispute. It's a crime." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I laid the documents on the counter: the bank application, the forensic report, the email thread between Betrayal and Gavin discussing the fraud. I spoke to him like I would a client during a security audit. I showed him the breach, the method of entry, and the stolen data. His demeanor changed. This wasn't a hysterical woman. This was a file, neatly packaged. He called a detective. An hour later, I walked out with a case number. That number was a shield. It was the official record that I was the victim, not the perpetrator. Now I had to manage the other liabilities, the family members themselves. The GoFundMe was the most public threat. I didn't contact Betrayal. That would be useless. I had Kara send a formal cease and desist letter directly to the platform's legal department. The letter cited the police report case number, attached the proof of Lorraine's actual medical status, a clean bill of health from her last physical, and referenced federal wire fraud statutes. GoFundMe didn't hesitate. They were protecting their own liability. Within 24 hours, the campaign was frozen, then removed for violating terms of service. Betrayal's $19,000 slush fund and the donations they had already spent were now subject to clawback. This, of course, triggered Lorraine. She called my soon-to-be disconnected old number. I let it go to voicemail twice. The third time, I answered, and I hit record. Ohio is a one-party consent state. Lila. What did you do? Her voice was sharp, panicked. Brielle's fundraiser. It's gone. They're saying it's fraud. Hello, Mom. What fundraiser are you talking about? The one for my illness? The one to save my life? Mom, I said, my voice perfectly level. What illness? Please, tell me exactly what illness you are suffering from. There was a pause. My nerves, the doctors. What's the name of the diagnosis? Mom. And what was the $50,000 for? You are an ungrateful child, she shrieked. I replied, I am recording this call. What was the money for? She hung up. It was perfect. Another piece of evidence for the file. The final variable was my father, Arthur. He was the only one I felt a shred of pity for. He was a victim of their manipulation, yes, but he was also a willing enabler. His passivity was the environment the bacteria needed to grow. I couldn't just tell him. I had to show him. I didn't do it in Ohio. I bought him a round-trip ticket to Chicago, telling him it was a pre-move dinner. I didn't take him to dinner. I took him to the office of a forensic accountant I had retained. What is this, Lila? Arthur asked, looking around the sterile conference room. This is Ms. Albright, I said. She's an independent financial auditor. I've asked her to review some documents. I slid the HELOC application across the table. He looked at it. It's the house. Are you helping us with the house? God bless you. Lila? Look at the cosigner signature. Dad. That's you. You signed it. You're helping. No, Dad. I didn't. Ms. Albright leaned forward. Mr. Sanchez, that is a forgery. Your wife and daughter, using your son-in-law's assistance, applied for a $150,000 loan against your house. Your shop is part of that property's collateral. If they take that money and fail to pay, the bank will seize your home and your business. Lila's signature was the only reason it was approved. She's the one who stopped it. He just sat there. He didn't speak for a full minute. He looked at the signature, then at me. He wasn't seeing his daughter. He was seeing the numbers. He was seeing the sandwich shop, the ovens he'd polished for 30 years, being auctioned on the courthouse steps. Lorraine, wouldn't, he whispered. Gavin did, I said. And Brielle and Mom helped. That broke him. That was the end of the passive, trusting Arthur. In 2 hours, we had a plan. The accountant helped me execute it. We established a new, private bank account in his name only. We began the process of legally separating his finances from Lorraine's. We moved the ownership of the sandwich shop, its assets, its name, its lease into a new protected trust that I funded. By the time he flew back to Ohio, Arthur Sanchez was financially insulated. He was a separate entity. My work in Ohio was done. I had patched the vulnerabilities. The credit freeze was the firewall. The police report was the alarm system. The GoFundMe shutdown was the counter-hack. And my father's finances were now air-gapped from the rest of the network. I finalized the sale of my own house and transferred the assets to Marin Ridge Holdings, LLC. Leaving the state wasn't just a retreat. It was a strategic repositioning. It was defense, putting distance and legal jurisdictions between us. But it was also a lure. I had shut down their money supply. I had cut off their access to my credit. I had exposed them. I knew they wouldn't just stop. They were desperate. I moved across the country, erased my tracks, and started a new clock. I was waiting to see how long it would take for them to follow the bait. I needed to know, once and for all, how far they would go. I was building a fortress, and I needed them to test the walls. The acquisition of the Marin Ridge property was not a move. It was an installation. My job is to design secure systems, and this house became my flagship project. The beta test for Sentinel North's most uncompromising residential security package. I am my own most demanding client. A fortress is useless if it is blind. I didn't just install cameras. I designed a comprehensive sensor grid. The perimeter is monitored by 8 fixed-lens, 4K thermal cameras. They are not simply passive recorders. They are tied directly into a local analytics server running a proprietary AI I developed. It doesn't just alert on motion, it analyzes posture, gait, and thermal signatures. It can differentiate, with 99% accuracy, between a deer, a delivery driver on a schedule, and an individual attempting to obscure their presence. The system's real analytic power is in its databases. The two cameras covering the driveway approach are tied to automatic license plate recognition. The gate, a solid slab of reinforced steel behind a facade of pleasant redwood, is networked to this system. My gate does not open with a code. It opens when it recognizes an approved vehicle. My whitelist is very short: my own car, my attorney's, and the specific vehicles of two pre-vetted delivery services. If any other vehicle approaches, the gate remains immovable. The driver is forced to use the video intercom. That intercom does not ring a bell in the house. It initiates an encrypted, peer-to-peer video call directly to my command desk. I can see and speak to them without them ever knowing if I am in the house, in the state, or on another continent. Security is not just visual, it is auditory. Paired with the 4 corner cameras are directional shotgun microphones. They are sensitive enough to pick up a hushed conversation at the property line, while the system's software actively filters out ambient noise like wind and distant traffic. The floodlights are not the simple motion-activated kind. They are military-grade, app-controlled LED panels. I can illuminate a single, precise square foot of the driveway, or I can bathe the entire acre in daylight bright light with a single tap. The AI can also lock onto a target, spotlighting it, tracking its movement automatically. The physical hardware is only one layer. The real vulnerability in any modern home is the network. A smart home is a stupidly insecure home. My network is segmented into 3 distinct, firewalled zones. The guest network, which I occasionally provide to a contractor, is a trap. It offers internet, but it is logged, throttled, and completely isolated, unable to touch any other device in the house. The IoT network for the few smart appliances I allowed. Like the thermostat lives on its own VLAN, it can speak to the internet, but the core network cannot speak to it. It is a one-way street, preventing a compromised refrigerator from becoming an access point. Finally, there is the core security network. This is the central nervous system. It is hardwired, operates on its own dedicated server, and is air-gapped from the public internet. Its only connection out is a single, encrypted data stream to my attorney's office. I patch its firmware manually every Tuesday. I have intrusion detection alerts set to a level I call paranoid. Any unauthorized port scan, any new MAC address attempting to join, any failed login attempt, and I receive an immediate, high-priority alert. With the infrastructure in place, I had to populate the threat database. This was the coldest day of the installation. I sat at my desk, and I created risk profiles for my family, just as I would for an executive client analyzing corporate threats. I uploaded every clear photograph I had of Lorraine, Brielle, and Gavin into the facial recognition database. The system now knows their faces. I took the audio file from the last shrieking voicemail my mother left me and used it to create a voice print signature. The system now knows her voice. I input the license plate numbers for both of their vehicles. The system now knows their cars. They are not family to the AI. They are designated Threat Profile Alpha. If any of their faces, voices, or vehicles are detected by any sensor, the system automatically begins recording all channels, locks all internal doors, and sends a silent alert to my personal device. The technology was the how. The why was clarified by what I called the 30-day silence. I am a scientist. I needed a control for my experiment. I had vanished. I had left my old life, my old number, my old email. I set a private rule. If, within 30 days of my departure, I received a single, genuine, non-monetary inquiry, a message, relayed through my old attorney in Ohio, asking, "Lila, are you safe? We are worried about you. Then I would reevaluate the parameters of my defense. The 30 days came and went. The legal mailbox I'd established received only junk mail. My Ohio attorney never called. The silence was absolute. It was the final piece of data. They were not concerned about my well-being. They were, I knew, concerned only about the sudden, complete cutoff of their financial supply line. The experiment was conclusive. This was not a broken family. This was a parasitic relationship, and the host had just finished building its armor. The fortress was no longer a precaution. It was a necessity. My life adapted to this new reality. I changed my work schedule. I sleep during the bright, safe hours of the day. I work at night. My command desk, with its 3 monitors, is my new office. I spend my hours drafting security architecture for the hospital bid, analyzing the bank's vulnerabilities, and I do it all while a silent 4-quadrant feed of my property plays on the monitor to my left. My eyes are always on the perimeter. This is not fear. This is vigilance. It is my new routine. The evidence I had brought from Ohio, the 7-page transaction log, the forged bank documents, the audio recordings, the GoFundMe archives, required its own security protocol. Data that does not exist in 3 places does not exist at all. Backup 1 is a 10-terabyte network-attached storage drive, fully encrypted, sitting inside the 2-hour fireproof safe in my foundation. Backup 2 is a zero-knowledge, encrypted cloud service, registered to the LLC, and paid for anonymously. Backup 3 is a physical, encrypted external hard drive, which resides in a safe deposit box at a bank 3 towns over, a bank where I have no other accounts or relationships. If they ever tried to paint me as the unstable one, I had the time-stamped, immutable, and redundant data to prove my sanity and their criminality. A fortress cannot be a legal island. I posted the signs, small, discreet, but legally compliant, at the entrance to my property. Notice: this property is under continuous audio and video surveillance. Entry constitutes consent to be recorded. California is a 2-party consent state for audio recording. My signs, and the audible, "You are being recorded" announcement that plays when someone activates the intercom, constitute legal, implied consent. Every word they say at my gate is admissible. I made contact with my nearest neighbor, a retired aerospace engineer named Marcus. I did not tell him my story. I told him I was the owner of Sentinel North, and that my house was a testbed for new systems. I gave him the direct number to the private neighborhood security patrol we both fund. "If you see anything, call them first, then me," I said. "My system logs everything. I'm happy to provide footage to law enforcement if needed." He appreciated the professionalism. Finally, I automated the last layer of my defense. Taped to the wall by my front door are 3 laminated QR codes. The first, labeled legal, if scanned, initiates an immediate, secure conference call with my attorney's 24-hour emergency line. The second, law enforcement, provides the 911 dispatcher with the exact GPS coordinates, address, and gate access code. The third, security, dials the neighborhood patrol's direct line. I wrote one final script. Every Sunday, at 2 a.m, the core server compiles the week's logs, every license plate scan, every perimeter ping, every failed network login, every gate activation. It packages this data into a single, encrypted file, and it automatically emails that file to Karis, my attorney, where it is archived, unread, as a digital dead man's switch. The house was no longer a home. It was a fully hardened, legally defensible, and automated system. The 30-day test had concluded. The silence was deafening. The fortress was complete. My fortress in Marin Ridge was silent, but the digital ether I had left behind in Ohio was not. I had anticipated a counterattack, and I was not disappointed. Their first weapon, as always, was the one they knew best, the lie. I don't maintain social media, but I do maintain network reconnaissance. I have alerts set for my name, my company's name, and the public-facing profiles of my family. The first alert pinged on day 32. It was Betrayal. Her profile was a curated performance of victimhood. The post was vague, but targeted. "It's so heartbreaking when you see a parent suffering," she wrote, beneath a filtered photo of herself looking pensive. "Especially when their own child, who has everything, refuses to even pick up the phone. Some people are just born without a heart." It was a classic Betrayal maneuver, public, passive-aggressive, and designed to solicit sympathy. It was also a test. She was rattling the digital cage, expecting me to leap to my own defense, to get drawn into a messy public argument where she controlled the emotional narrative. I did not. I simply screenshotted the post, time-stamped it, and added it to the psychological subfolder in my evidence archive. The escalation came a week later. A new Google alert hit my inbox. This time, it was a link to a small, local Cedar Heights podcast, a community gossip show called The Cedar Post. The episode title was, "Is Family Loyalty Dead?" I listened to the audio through my studio monitors, the sound filling my sterile office. The host, a woman with a syrupy, concerned voice, was discussing an anonymous tip from a heartbroken local relative. "We're hearing a truly sad story," she cooed, "about a local family, pillars of the community, whose matriarch is suffering from a terrible illness. They've been abandoned by a daughter, a successful engineer, we're told, who apparently finds her new, fancy life more important than her own sick mother. They weren't just testing the cage anymore, they were trying to set it on fire. This was a public smear campaign. I did not call the podcast. I did not email the host. I did not engage. I instructed Karis, my attorney. He assembled a single, streamlined package. It was delivered via certified courier to the podcast's editor and its parent company. The package contained no threats. It contained only facts. It included 1. A copy of Lorraine's most recent bill of health. 2. A summary of the frozen, fraudulent GoFundMe campaign, showing its removal for terms of service violations. 3. The 7-page timeline of my support, totaling $62,300. 4. A heavily redacted copy of the police report, citing felony identity theft, with Gavin's and Brielle's names blacked out, leaving only the case number. 5. A simple cover letter from Karis's firm, stating that I was the victim of a coordinated campaign of financial and emotional fraud, and that any further broadcast of false and defamatory statements would be met with immediate and significant legal action. The result was beautifully efficient. The podcast episode was pulled from all platforms within 6 hours, 24 hours later. The Cedar Post issued a formal on-air retraction and apology. They cited newly provided information and a misunderstanding of a complex family financial matter. They never mentioned my name or my family's again. The public silence that followed was deafening. I had not argued. I had simply presented data. The data won. This quiet, surgical victory must have terrified Gavin. He realized I was not playing his game. I was playing my own. He tried to pivot, to negotiate. An email arrived in my secure legal inbox. The one tied to the LLC. It was from his personal account. Subject, "We need to fix this." "Lila," it began, his tone a slimy performance of boardroom reason. "This has all gone too far. The podcast, the lawyers. It's a bad look for everyone. You're making a big deal out of a simple family misunderstanding. I know you're upset, but this isn't the way. We are willing to forgive you for this aggression. If you agree to stop this process, we can talk about how to restore your good name in the community. We can put this all behind us. It's time to be a family again. Restore my good name. Forgive me." He was still trying to position himself as the one with the power to grant absolution. I did not reply. Karis did. His response was one sentence. "Mr. Pierce, my client directs your attention to Cedar Heights Police Department, case number 45889B, regarding the felony forgery of her signature on a $150,000 loan application. All further contact should be directed to this office." The line was drawn, not in sand, but in concrete and steel. The repercussions of these counter-moves began to echo back from Ohio. My mother, panicked by the failed smear campaign and the legal implications of Karis's letter, tried my old dead number. I watched the logs as her calls came in, one after another. 9 times in a single night. I let everyone go to the disconnected voicemail portal. I archived the audio files. They were frantic, weeping, accusing, and above all, terrified. They were not apologies. They were demands that I undo what they had done. Amidst this, a single, new text message appeared on the clean burner phone I had provided to my father. It was the only device whose number was known to just one person. "I believe you," the message said. "The things they are saying about the podcast, about the church, it's bad. I believe you. Stay safe." It was the first time in my adult life he had ever chosen a side. He had separated himself from the unit. He was no longer their shield. The consequences were no longer just social. They were systemic. My credit freeze and the associated fraud report had triggered an automatic flag. Gavin's firm, a wealth management company that prided itself on ethics and compliance, was notified by the credit bureau of an unauthorized, non-permissible pull on my file from one of their terminals. An internal investigation was launched. Karis received a letter from their compliance department, formally requesting a statement from me regarding the incident. Gavin was being investigated by his own employers. The financial cascade was immediate. With Gavin under investigation, his fourth quarter bonus, the one Betrayal had been counting on, was frozen. Then canceled. This was the money they had planned to use for the balloon payment on their car. The money they had stolen from the GoFundMe was being clawed back by the platform, leaving their bank account overdrawn. The $150,000 HELOC they had forged my name to get was, of course, dead. Betrayal's frantic, performative social media posts stopped. They were replaced by a new kind of silence, the silence of genuine panic. Lorraine faced her own audit. Her community, the church group she had cultivated for years, had seen the GoFundMe. They had seen it shut down for fraud. They had heard the retraction on the podcast. The narrative had flipped. The whispers were no longer about the ungrateful engineer daughter. The whispers were about Lorraine, the sick matriarch who wasn't sick. They were about Gavin, the finance guy who was in trouble at work. They were about Betrayal, who had collected thousands for a lie. My silence, my refusal to engage in their drama, had become my strongest weapon. I hadn't needed to smear them. I just held up a mirror, and the community was finally seeing the truth. The pressure in Ohio was clearly building to an unsustainable level. I knew they were desperate. I knew they had lost their local battle. What I didn't know was how far they would go to find me. Until night 21, it was just before midnight, I was reviewing the hospital security blueprints and the perimeter ping on my left-hand monitor, which had been silent for 3 weeks, lit up. A vehicle, unlisted. It was moving slowly, too slowly, past the entrance to my driveway. It was not a delivery. It was not a neighbor. My hands moved over the console. I patched into the long-range ALPR camera, the one aimed down the road. The car was a dark-colored sedan. It passed my gate, slowed, and then pulled a U-turn 200 yards down, coming back for a second pass. The AI locked onto the license plate. It was an Ohio plate. The system ran the number against the Threat Profile Alpha database. A match. The plate was registered to a rental car, but the rental agreement was in Gavin's name. My blood did not run cold. My pulse did not quicken. My training simply took over. They were here. They had found the LLC's property. They were casing my fortress. I hit record on all external cameras. I tracked the vehicle as it completed its second pass and then drove away, disappearing down the hill. I knew they would be back. They had lost their money, their reputation, and their control. Desperate people do not follow rules. They follow patterns, and I knew their pattern was to escalate. My fortress was no longer a theoretical exercise. The perimeter had been breached. The threat was no longer digital. It was physical. And it was just outside the gate. The system I had built in Ohio was a complex, interlocking network of dependencies. It was fragile. It relied on a single, critical component to function me: my money, my credit, my silence, and my willingness to absorb the damage. When I removed that component, the system did not just fail, it entered a cascade failure. I watched it happen from 2,000 miles away. Not with emotion, but with the detached focus of an engineer watching a stress test. The first domino was the market, an external pressure they had never planned for. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates for Gavin and Brielle, who had financed their lifestyle on a series of adjustable-rate mortgages and balloon payments. This was an extinction-level event. Their primary mortgage reset, as Gavin had surely known it would. Their monthly payment did not just increase, it nearly doubled, a financial hypoxia that suddenly cut off their oxygen. The second domino was Gavin's career. The internal investigation I had triggered by reporting his unauthorized credit pull, the one he used to try and forge the loan, had put him on shaky ground. His compliance department was watching him. Desperate people make mistakes. Distracted by the collapsing GoFundMe and the rising mortgage, he made a fatal one. He misallocated a major trade, costing a client 6 figures. He wasn't just suspended, he was terminated. The firm, eager to rid itself of a compliance liability, fired him for cause. His corporate cards were revoked. His bonus, the one Brielle had been counting on for years, was vaporized. And just like that, the finance guy had no finances. The third domino was Lorraine. The GoFundMe campaign was not just shut down, it was investigated. The platform, facing its own legal exposure from Karis's letter, initiated a full clawback of the $19,000 they had raised. The donations they had already spent were now a debt. Her church community, the one she had used as her emotional hunting ground, was horrified. They didn't just question her, they excommunicated her. She who had built her identity on being a pillar of the community was now a social pariah. The woman who had faked an illness for money, I knew, with the precision of a clock. When the panic fully set in, a new email arrived in my old, dead account, the one I kept monitored. An insect trap for just this purpose. It was from Brielle. Subject, please. Lila, I know we had a disagreement, but this is real. The bank made a mistake on the mortgage. Gavin's firm is restructuring. We just need a temporary loan. $7,500, just to get us through the month. Please, Mom is crying every day. A disagreement. Restructuring. A mistake on the mortgage. The lies were reflexive. Pathetic. I did not reply. I archived the email. I dragged it into the financial evidence folder. The fourth domino was the house itself, with no income from Gavin, no slush fund from the GoFundMe, and a mortgage payment they couldn't possibly meet. The default was immediate. I didn't need to guess. I had an alert set on their property's public record file. The lis pendens was filed with the county. It was the first legal step in foreclosure. A few days later, the notice of default was physically tacked to their front door, a public announcement of their failure for the whole neighborhood to see. The fifth and final domino was the domestic implosion. Lorraine, with no money and no social standing, had nowhere to go. Her name was on the mortgage, too. She was as culpable and as homeless as they were. She was forced to move into Brielle and Gavin's guest room. My father, in our one weekly secure call on his burner phone, described the sound. "It's awful, Lila," he told me, his voice quiet. He was still living in the old house, but he could hear the screaming from next door. They don't stop. Lorraine and Brielle. They blame each other. They blame Gavin. Then they all start blaming you. "Are you safe, Dad?" I asked, the only question that mattered. "Yes, the shop. Lila, the shop is good." My countermove had worked. While their house fell into foreclosure, Arthur's sandwich shop, now legally protected in a trust managed by my accountant, was thriving. He had separated his finances completely from Lorraine, just as we had planned. He was secure. He was the control group. His stability was the starkest evidence of their toxicity. They were trapped. Their credit was shot. Their income was zero. Their reputation was destroyed. Gavin, in a final, pitiful move, sold his luxury sedan. I saw the listing online. It wasn't enough to cover even a single month of their new mortgage payment. They had only one move left. They had to find me. Brielle tried first, the analog way. I got a flurry of emails from old high school friends. "Hey, Lila, your sister called me. She sounds bad. She's desperately trying to find you. Do you have a new number?" I replied to each with a polite, firm message. "Thank you for the concern. I am safe. I am not in contact with my family for legal and safety reasons. Please do not share any information with them." The analog path was a dead end. They had hit the wall of my friend's loyalty. Then, Gavin tried the digital way. He was not a tech expert, but he was obsessive. My LLC, Marin Ridge Holdings, was a ghost. It was registered in Delaware, managed in Nevada. It was a legal fortress. He couldn't find my name. So he thought, how did she get there? The car, my electric car, the cross-country trip. He must have spent days, maybe weeks, sifting through data broker refuse, looking for any scrap of digital data I might have left behind. He was looking for a digital breadcrumb. He found one, a single, stupid mistake, months ago, while I was scouting properties. I had stopped at a coffee shop in downtown Marin Ridge. I had used their public Wi-Fi for 10 minutes. I hadn't even been in my own car. It was a rental, but I had logged in with my old, now dead personal email. It was a flimsy lead, a digital ghost, a single Wi-Fi check-in, in a single town. That was all they had. It was a fool's errand, a 1 in a million chance, but they were desperate, and they had nothing left to lose. They took the last of the cash from Gavin's car sale, rented the cheapest sedan they could find, and they started driving west. They drove for 2 days straight, fueled by rage and a single, desperate, flawed piece of data. They drove toward a town they had never seen, searching for a person who did not want to be found. They arrived in Marin Ridge sometime after midnight. In the middle of a cold, driving Pacific rainstorm, they had no address. They had no plan. They just started driving, grid by grid, street by street, in the dark, peering through the rain at every house, and then, somehow, they saw it. The new construction, the clean lines, the solid gate, the one house on the hill that looked like a fortress. They parked, they got out, their cheap rental cars' dome light flashing on and off. At 2:11 in the morning, they stood at my gate, shivering in the rain. I sat at my command desk, the 3 monitors painting my face in a cold blue light. On the main screen, the 3 of them huddled in the thermal gray downpour, pathetic and desperate. They were not family. They were a hostile element at my perimeter. My fingers moved across the control panel. I did not open the gate. I initiated a protocol. First, I activated the floodlights. I didn't just turn them on. I brought them up to 100% intensity. 2 panels, totaling 80,000 lumens, instantly vaporized the darkness. The driveway and the gate were blasted with sterile, artificial daylight. I saw them flinch, throwing their arms up to shield their eyes. They were rats in a spotlight. Second, I activated the external microphones and speakers. I did not open a simple 2-way call. I patched the audio feed from the directional shotgun mic directly into my recording server. Simultaneously, I opened a channel, routing my voice from my headset microphone to the speaker array embedded in the gate pillar. Third, I engaged all 4 cameras covering the front of the property, the high-resolution gate camera for facial detail, the 2 thermal cameras at the perimeter corners for body language, and the long-range ALPR camera, now repurposed to capture the entire scene, including their rental car parked haphazardly on the shoulder. The red record icon blinked steadily on all 4 feeds. They were disoriented by the light. Lorraine stumbled back. Gavin shielded his eyes, trying to find the source. My voice cut through the sound of the rain, amplified, clear, and disembodied. It did not sound like their daughter. It sounded like the house itself. "This is a private, secured property. You are trespassing. All audio and video are being recorded for law enforcement. State your purpose." Lorraine flinched. recognizing the voice but not the tone. She rushed forward, putting her face close to the intercom panel, as if that would make this personal. "Lila, honey, it's us. Please, open the gate. We're freezing." "I see you," I said. My voice was calm, utterly flat. "My question was not who you are. It was what your purpose is." "Purpose?" Brielle shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria and cold. "What kind of question is that? We're your family. We're dying out here." "You are not dying," I stated. "You are wet. You traveled 2,000 miles. You did not do so without a purpose. You are here for money. Let's start with that." "No," Lorraine cried, her hand on the gate. "No, honey, we just want to talk. We just want to see you. We've been so worried." "Worried," I repeated. The word was an empty shell. "You were so worried you organized a public smear campaign on a podcast. You were so worried you faked a neurological disease for a GoFundMe campaign. You were so worried you forged my signature on a bank loan." A dead silence from the gate. Even the rain seemed to quiet down. They stared at the speaker, stunned. "Let's try this again," I said, my voice as cold as the steel gate between us. "I want the truth. Use your real names. Speak clearly for the recording. Who signed my name? Lila Sanchez. To the $150,000 home equity loan application." Gavin, who had been silent, stepped forward. He tried to muster his corporate finance voice. "Lila, this is not the time or the place. We are cold. We are tired. Let us in, and we can discuss this like rational adults." "No," I said. "This is the perfect time. And this is the only place. You are on my property. You will answer the question. Who signed my name?" "It was a misunderstanding," Brielle yelled, lunging toward the intercom. Gavin was trying to help. "We were trying to protect the assets for everyone. You wouldn't understand the finances." "I understand the finances perfectly." "Brielle," I said, "I understand that you, Lorraine, and Gavin conspired to commit felony identity theft. I have the police report. Case number 45889B, Cedar Heights Police Department. I have the IP logs from Gavin's terminal at his office, dated at 2:34 p.m. on October 9th. I have the forensic analysis of the transplanted digital signature. I understand everything." Gavin looked like he had been shot. He visibly recoiled. He knew, in that instant, that this was not an argument. It was a prosecution. Lorraine collapsed into sobs, the performative, racking sobs that had always been her ultimate weapon. "Lila, please. Look at us. You can't leave your mother out here to get sick. Just let us in. Just for one night, I'm begging you. As your mother." "You are trespassing on private property," I said, my voice unwavering. "Under California Penal Code 602, I am legally ordering you to vacate the premises. If you refuse, I will have you removed." "You would call the police on your own mother," she screamed, her mask of sorrow slipping into pure rage. "I have already filed a police report against my own family," I replied. "A report for felony fraud. Trespassing is a minor addition." I let the silence hang again, letting the weight of their situation crush them. The 80,000 lumen floodlights baked them in exposure. The rain plastered their hair to their skulls. They had no cards left to play. I offered them one. "This conversation is over," I said. "However, I am giving you one, and only one, opportunity. This entire event is being logged. Every word, every image. If you want me to even consider opening this gate, you will confess, clearly, one by one. You will state your name, and you will state exactly what you did. No excuses, no justifications, the truth, or I'm making the call to the neighborhood security patrol right now." They looked at each other. They were trapped. Gavin, the finance guy, was clearly calculating the legal ramifications of confessing versus being arrested for trespassing while under investigation for fraud. He was the first to crack. His voice was no longer the smooth corporate negotiator. It was a reedy, pathetic whisper. "My name is Gavin Pierce." He was looking at the ground. unable to face the camera lens. I accessed the file, the power of attorney. I used it to secure the loan. You forged my name, I corrected him, my voice sharp. Yes, he whispered. But it was for the family. We were under pressure. Irrelevant. I cut him off. Next, Brielle. Brielle was shaking, but with rage, not cold. My name is Brielle Pierce. Fine. I set up the GoFundMe. Is that what you want to hear? I set it up. Mom was stressed. She was sick. We needed help. You abandoned us. You faked a neurological disorder, I stated. You used a photograph from 5 years ago to solicit $19,000 under false pretenses. Say it. I embellished, she screamed. I used an old photo. We needed the money. You had so much. Lila, you always had so much. And you, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. The spotlight now on the last figure. Lorraine. My mother was silent. She stared at the speaker, her face a mask of disbelief. She had heard her son-in-law and her daughter confess to felonies, and still, she believed her role as mother would grant her amnesty. Lorraine, speak. She was silent for a long time. The only sound was the rain and Brielle's gasping sobs. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick. I need you. It was the ultimate distilled truth of our entire relationship. It wasn't, I love you. It wasn't, I'm sorry. It was, I need you. I let her words hang in the air. Let the microphone capture them. Let the server log them. Then, I delivered my final judgment. No, I said. You do not need me. You need someone else to pay for your choices. You need someone else to absorb your consequences. You need someone to be your ATM, your scapegoat, and your shield. I am not that person anymore. I watched them for one more second. Gavin, the picture of a defeated man. Brielle, crumpled on the wet concrete. A child having a tantrum. And my mother, staring at the gate, her face hollow as she finally realized the well was dry. My finger moved from the audio controls to the speed dial on my console. I pressed the button for security. The voice on the other end was professional. Marin Ridge Security. This is dispatch. This is Lila Sanchez at 1480 Marin Ridge. I have 3 trespassers at my front gate. They are hostile and refusing to leave. I am requesting an armed escort to remove them from my property. Understood. Ms. Sanchez, a patrol car is 2 minutes out. I patched my voice back to the external speaker. The neighborhood security patrol is on its way. They will be here in 2 minutes. If you are still on my property when they arrive, you will be arrested. Leave now. That broke them. The word, arrested, finally cut through their delusion. Gavin grabbed Brielle by the arm, hauling her to her feet. He half dragged, half pushed her toward the rental car. Lorraine didn't move. She just stared at the gate. Mom! Brielle shrieked. Mom, come on! Gavin ran back, grabbed Lorraine's arm, and pulled her. Lorraine, move. She's not bluffing. They piled into the cheap sedan. The engine roared, tires spinning on the wet asphalt. They sped off into the night, just as the white SUV of the Marin Ridge Security Patrol, its yellow lights flashing, turned the corner at the bottom of the hill. I watched the patrol car follow them out of the neighborhood to ensure they were gone. Then, I closed the audio channel. I deactivated the floodlights, plunging the driveway back into darkness. I sat there, the only sound in my office the quiet hum of the server. I isolated the audio-video file of the last 10 minutes. I tagged it, encrypted it, and addressed it to Karis. Subject File B, Incident at Marin Ridge, 2:24 a.m. I hit send. The fortress had held. The breach was contained, and the evidence was now in the hands of my lawyer. The video file. File B was uploaded and archived by my attorney's office before the sun rose over Marin Ridge. The incident at the gate was not a family drama. It was the acquisition of Exhibit B, a full recorded confession, obtained legally on private property after ample warning. My fortress had not just repelled the invaders, it had documented their surrender. My instructions to Karis were precise. This was no longer a defensive operation. We were moving to offense. Within hours, Karis filed a motion to append the new evidence to the existing criminal complaint in Cedar Heights. The digital file of my mother, sister, and brother-in-law, illuminated by 80,000 lumens, confessing to forgery, fraud, and conspiracy, was now formally attached to police case number 45889B. Simultaneously, Karis filed a new civil suit in Ohio court. This was not about emotion. It was about math. The suit named Gavin Pierce, Brielle Pierce, and Lorraine Sanchez as co-defendants. The demands were itemized. 1 full restitution of the $62,300 I had documented, 2 full reimbursement for all my legal fees, forensic accounting fees, and private investigation costs, 3 punitive damages for defamation. Citing the podcast incident, 4 punitive damages for emotional distress and the severe breach of fiduciary trust that led to the forgery. This was the legal broadside. The next step was to control the public narrative, not by engaging in it, but by ending it with an overwhelming display of data. I assembled what I called the truth packet. It was 10 pages long. It was not a letter. It was a report, bound with the logo of Karis's law firm. Page 1 was the cover letter from Karis, stating that I, Lila Sanchez, had been the target of a multi-year campaign of financial and psychological abuse, culminating in felony-level fraud. Page 2 was the 7-page, single-spaced, itemized timeline of every dollar they had taken, from the $9,000 roof to the $12,000 veneers. Page 3 was a copy of the GoFundMe removal notice, citing terms of service violations and misrepresentation. Page 4 was a copy of the Cedar Post podcast's public retraction and apology. Page 5 was a redacted copy of the civil suit's first page, clearly showing the case number and the names of the defendants. Page 6 was a list of my terms for settlement, full repayment, and a public notarized apology. Pages 7 through 10 were transcripts of the most critical audio, Lorraine's panicked call about the GoFundMe, and excerpts from the gate confession, with Gavin, Brielle, and Lorraine's admissions, word for word. I sent this packet via certified mail to 3 places: the board of directors at Lorraine's church, the editor-in-chief of the Cedar Heights local newspaper, and the parent company of the Cedar Post podcast. I sent it with no request, no comment, just the data. The effect was instantaneous. The local gossip ecosystem, which had been feeding on rumors for weeks, went silent. It had been starved of oxygen and presented with an irrefutable, terrifying, and professionally packaged stack of facts. The host of the Cedar Post, realizing she had been a pawn in a felony, was horrified. She emailed Karis, begging me to come on the show, to tell my side and set the record straight. I declined. I do not engage in local gossip. Instead, I had Karis release a single, 300-word official statement. It was posted on his firm's website and emailed to the same 3 recipients. It was dry, cold, and final. It stated that I was the victim of documented financial crimes, that the evidence was comprehensive and irrefutable, and that I considered the matter a legal, not a personal, issue. I would be making no further public comment and would pursue all remedies through the court system. The most significant validation came from my father, Arthur, who had been watching all of this from the fragile safety of his new financial independence, made his own move. He posted a photo on the sandwich shop's new business page. It was a photo of him, standing by his ovens, holding a grand reopening sign. The caption read, "I am proud to confirm that I am the sole owner of this establishment, which is now operating under its own protected trust. My finances are, and will remain, completely separate from those of my wife, Lorraine. I stand by my daughter, Lila Sanchez, 100%. Thank you for your support of this local business." It was a public declaration of allegiance. He had chosen his side. For Lorraine, this was the final social cut. With the evidence of the gate incident, Karis easily secured the restraining order. The court granted a temporary order, barring Gavin, Brielle, and Lorraine from coming within 150 yards of my property, my person, or my vehicles, pending a full hearing. They were now legally barred from my street. The parasites, cut off from their host and exposed to the light, began to capitulate. One by one, Brielle was first. She emailed Karis, a frantic, misspelled mess of mediation and misunderstanding. Karis replied with my terms, unchanged. A court-stipulated repayment plan for her share of the $62,000, plus the full $19,000 from the GoFundMe, and a formal, notarized letter of apology, confessing to her actions, to be filed as an addendum to the civil case. There would be no mediation, there was only surrender. Gavin, through a cheap local lawyer, tried to bargain. His career was over, his termination for cause was permanent, but he was terrified of the final nail of formal complaint from me to his professional certifying board, which would permanently revoke his licenses, ensuring he could never work in finance again. His lawyer offered a settlement. He would agree to the civil compensation, liquidating his 401k. If I would sign an agreement not to file that complaint, I considered it. I instructed Karis to reply, "My client makes no promises regarding professional sanctions. However, her decision on that matter may be influenced by the speed and completeness of Mr. Pierce's financial compliance with the civil settlement." It was not a yes, it was a leash. Finally, Lorraine, the state attorney's office, prompted by the GoFundMe platform's official fraud report and the evidence in my truth packet, finally charged her. It was not a major felony, given her age, her lack of a prior record, and her distraught state in court. The prosecutor settled. She pled no contest to misdemeanor fraud. She received a fine, probation, and a court order to personally repay every cent of the $19,000 she and Brielle had solicited. Her photo was not in the paper, but the court filing was public record. Her humiliation was absolute. The narrative in Cedar Heights was rewritten in a single week. The story was no longer about the ungrateful, cold-hearted engineer daughter. The story was about the meticulous, silent engineer who had logs, who had data, and who had patiently, methodically, and legally dismantled a family of con artists. The woman who had stayed silent wasn't weak. She was waiting. She was the one with the proof. I did not celebrate. I am a security architect. The system had been tested. The perimeter had been approached. I identified this as a vulnerability. I made a call to a commercial security installer in San Francisco. A week later, my driveway was excavated. They installed a set of high-speed, hydraulic bollards, the kind used to protect embassies and federal buildings. They sat flush with my driveway, invisible. But with a single tap on my console, 3 solid steel cylinders would rise from the ground, capable of stopping a 10,000-pound truck traveling at 50 miles per hour. The steel gate was the lock. These were the deadbolts. My fortress was complete. The legal battles were now just a matter of process, of lawyers sending documents back and forth. The silence from Ohio was final. Then, 2 days after the bollards were installed, a new email appeared in my legal inbox, the one for Marin Ridge Holdings, LLC. It was from a sender I did not recognize, a corporate domain for a large-scale property investment group. The subject line was only 5 words: offer to acquire asset. The email was unexpected. Offer to acquire asset. It was from a senior partner at a commercial real estate fund I had never heard of, Cedar Redevelopment Associates. My legal inbox was for service of process and corporate filings, not unsolicited offers. I forwarded it to Karis with a single word, analyze. He replied within an hour. They're real. Lila. This is a major fund. They've been buying up half of downtown Cedar Heights for a mixed-use development project. They're in their final acquisition phase. What asset? I wrote back. They don't specify. I checked the county records, he replied. They've acquired every parcel on the block of your father's old neighborhood, except one. And then I smiled. A cold, thin, real smile. The house, my parents' house, the asset. When Gavin and Brielle had forged my name to that $150,000 home equity loan, they had made a fatal error. They assumed they were the only ones watching the property. But I am a systems architect. I had monitors on everything. The instant their fraudulent application hit the bank's system, it triggered a risk alert, which my contact at the bank, Sarah, had quietly forwarded to me. While they were planning their theft, I was engineering a rescue. After the meeting in Chicago, my father, Arthur, finally understood. He was terrified. But for the first time, he was angry. He gave me his consent to act. I didn't just report the fraud. I neutralized the asset. Using the Arthur's Sandwiches Trust, the legal entity I had established to protect his shop, I made a move. I routed my own capital into the trust, and I had my legal team approach the original bank that held my parents' mortgage. It was a simple, brutal calculation. I presented the bank with the evidence of the new, secondary fraud being attempted against their primary collateral. I showed them Lorraine's complicity. I showed them Gavin's forged signature. I made it clear that this property was now a toxic, litigious nightmare. Then, I made them an offer the Arthur's Trust would buy the entire mortgage note from them, in cash, at 80% of its value. The bank, facing a guaranteed legal mess and a high-risk loan, saw my offer as a gift. They took the deal. They sold the note. 1 week before I left Ohio, the Arthur's Sandwiches Trust became the legal lien holder on my parents' home. Lorraine, Betrayal, and Gavin had no idea. They thought they were trying to steal from a bank. They were, in fact, trying to steal from me. So, when they all defaulted, which they did, the moment I cut them off and their foreclosure notice was posted, they were not defaulting on a stranger. They were defaulting on my father. The trust foreclosed. It was a clean, swift, legal procedure. Lorraine and Betrayal, who was also on the deed, were evicted. The house, the one they had leveraged, planned, and schemed over, was now the legal property of the trust I had built to protect my father. And now, months later, a redevelopment fund wanted to buy it. It was the last piece of their puzzle. They needed it. I called Karis. I have my terms. They're offering 20% over market value. Lila, they want it fast. They can have it, I said. They can have it at market value. I don't want their extra cash, but the sale is contingent on a secondary contract, a non-negotiable addendum, which is, they are building a luxury mixed-use development, I said, pulling up their public filings. Prime retail space on the ground floor. I want the trust to be given a 15-year lease on the corner unit. A1, best visibility. Karis was silent for a moment. A 15-year lease. What are the terms? 25 cents on the dollar, I said. Fixed rate, no increases for the entire term. They can amortize the loss against the goodwill. A local legacy business like Arthur's Sandwiches is the best public relations they could ask for. They get their block, and my father gets his future. That is the only deal. The fund agreed in less than a day. The lost rent was a rounding error in their $50 million project. The PR value of saving a beloved local sandwich shop was, as I'd calculated, priceless. The contracts were drafted, the sale of the house closed, the trust was suddenly, significantly, liquid, and Arthur Sanchez, owner of the trust, signed his new 15-year lease. Karis, following my instructions, had scheduled the final signing for November 5th, my 35th birthday. The news that Arthur's Sandwiches was not closing, but expanding, hit Cedar Heights like a shockwave. It was the anchor tenant for the new, fancy Cedar Crossing development. The first text came to my father's new, clean phone. It was from Betrayal. He showed it to me on our weekly call. Dad, oh my God, I heard. That's amazing. The new shop looks beautiful. I saw the drawings. I'm looking for work. You know, just to help out. I can run the register for you. Just like old times. Let me know. Arthur looked at the message on his screen. Then he looked at me, over the video call. He didn't sigh. He didn't look sad. He just pressed delete. He did not reply. The next was an email to the shop's new official info account. It was from Gavin. Mr. Sanchez, congratulations on this impressive expansion. Moving from a single proprietor shop to a high-volume anchor tenancy is a complex logistical and financial challenge. My expertise in growth strategy and enterprise finance could be invaluable in maximizing your profits. I would be happy to offer my consulting services for a modest fee. My father had his new assistant, a very efficient woman named Maria, send back a polite, one-sentence form letter. Thank you for your inquiry, but we are not in need of outside consultation at this time. The final attempt was Lorraine. She didn't text or email. She showed up. It was the last day at the old shop. My father was selling off the last of the old equipment. Lorraine walked in, looking thin and gray. "Arthur," she said, her voice trying to find its old authority. "We need to talk about this, about us." My father didn't look up from the cash box he was counting. He finished his stack of ones, wrapped them, and then placed a small, stiff business card on the counter in front of her. "No, Lorraine, we don't," he said. His voice was not angry. It was just empty. "This is my lawyer. His name is Mr. Karras. His number is on the card. If you have anything to say, you can say it to him. Please leave. I'm closing." She looked at the card, then at his face. She saw nothing for her there. No anger, no love, no pity, nothing. She turned and walked out of the shop she had been in 1,000 times, and she never came back. I flew to Ohio for the grand opening. I wore no makeup. I wore a baseball cap from a college I didn't attend. I parked 3 blocks away and stood in the back of the crowd, behind the local news camera and the town mayor. The new shop was beautiful, all clean steel, warm wood, and bright lighting. A line stretched down the block. I watched my father cut a red ribbon. He wasn't the tired, stooped man who smelled of vinegar and onions. He was wearing a new chef's coat. He looked solid. He was smiling. He was laughing as the mayor shook his hand. He looked 10 years younger. He looked free. I watched for 10 minutes. I saw him safe. I saw him secure. I saw him protected by a fortress of contracts and LLCs that I had built for him. I did not go in. I did not say hello. I turned around, got in my rental car, drove to the airport, and flew home. I landed at San Francisco International, got in my car, and began the drive north to Marin Ridge. The sun was setting. The civil suit was settled. The criminal charges were filed. My father was safe. It was over. My secure phone, the one synced to my house, buzzed on the passenger seat. It was not a text. It was not a call. It was a push notification from the Sentinel North server at my house. Perimeter, ping unknown device. I frowned. That was impossible. The restraining order was permanent. They wouldn't be that stupid. I pulled over to a scenic overlook. The Pacific Ocean churning below. I opened the security app. The alert was for a vehicle, a gray sedan. The license plate was not one I recognized. It was not in the Threat Profile Alpha database. It was a California plate, but the AI had flagged it as familiar query, a low-confidence match. I opened the log. The gray sedan hadn't come to my gate. It had stopped at a house 3 doors down, idling for 60 seconds, just long enough to trigger a ping. Then it had driven on. I ran a deep cross-reference. Why is it familiar? The server dug. It pulled the archived logs from night 21, the night at the gate, 2:11 in the morning. My blood went cold. On that night, my system had logged 3 unknown device pings. But my eyes, and my anger, had been focused on the 2 cars I recognized, the rental sedan holding my family, and the security patrol SUV that came to chase them off. I had missed the 3rd car. The logs from that night showed another vehicle, parked 300 yards down the road, in the dark. It had been sitting there, watching. It left 30 seconds before the patrol car arrived. Its plate had been partially obscured by fog, but the AI had logged what it could. A partial read, a gray sedan, this new ping, this new gray sedan. It was not the same car. It was a similar car, a fleet vehicle, and it hadn't stopped at my house. It had stopped at my neighbor's, and 5 minutes before that, at his neighbor's. This wasn't Gavin. This wasn't Brielle. This was systematic. This was professional. Someone was pinging the neighborhood. Someone was probing. Not with emotion, but with technology. They were running a test. They knew there was a fortress on this hill. They were just trying to figure out which house it was. Someone was still hunting me. I sat in my car on that scenic overlook, the Pacific churning below, and stared at the log file, a gray sedan, California plates, probing the neighborhood, street by street, house by house. It wasn't the rental car my family had used. It was not in my threat database, but the system had flagged it as a familiar query for a reason. It was the same query as the third car, the one I had ignored on that night, the one that had sat parked in the shadows 300 yards down the road, watching, the professional. My family was broke, disorganized, and legally neutered. They were not capable of this kind of systematic, technological probe. This was someone else. This was the private investigator Gavin had hired with the last of their GoFundMe money. Before I had the platform shut it down. They had failed. So they had sent a proxy. He had found the property registered to my LLC, the decoy. He had watched the entire confrontation at 2:11 in the morning, and he must have realized what I knew: the entire scenario was too perfect. The lights, the cameras, the confessions. It was too clean. It was a trap. He was no longer looking for the decoy. He was probing the neighborhood, testing for other signals, looking for the real Lila Sanchez. I started the car and drove. I did not drive to 1480 Marin Ridge. I am a security systems architect. When a client is under extreme threat, you do not build one fortress, you build two. The first is the one the enemy can find. It is hard. It is obvious. It is loud. It is covered in cameras and sensors. It is designed to draw the attack. It is the decoy. The house at 1480 Marin Ridge, with its hydraulic bollards, its 4K cameras, and its seismic sensors, was the most secure, over-engineered piece of bait in California. I had bought it under the Marin Ridge Holdings LLC, and I had built it to be found. It was my honeypot. It was designed to attract my family, to contain them, and to record them, and it had worked perfectly. My real home is 20 miles away, in a different county. It is a nondescript condominium on the 17th floor of a luxury high-rise, purchased under a second, unrelated LLC registered in Wyoming. Its security is anonymity. It is protected by the building's biometric access, a professional 24-hour security staff, and a server in my closet that is physically air-gapped from the decoy system. I had never, not once, spent the night at the decoy house. I arrived at my condo, and from my real quiet command center, I called Karis. The PI they hired is back. He's probing the neighborhood. Karis was a true professional. It took him less than 3 hours to trace the PI's license plate. The man was licensed in Fresno. He also had 2 harassment complaints pending against him. We had the video footage of his car, the first car, conducting illegal surveillance on my private property, the decoy on the same night my family was trespassing. Karis filed an emergency motion. The judge, who was already handling the restraining order, was furious. The PI was summoned. Faced with losing his license and being named as a co-conspirator in my civil suit, he capitulated. He admitted, in a sworn affidavit, that he was hired by Gavin Pierce to locate and monitor me. The court immediately extended the permanent restraining order to include the PI and his entire agency. He was legally barred, for life, from coming within 500 yards of me, my properties including the decoy or my father. The final hunter was leashed. It was, I believed, finally over. The civil suit was a mathematical certainty. The repayment checks had begun to arrive, small and grudging. My father's shop was thriving. Then Betrayal, a cornered animal with no weapons left but drama, made her last move. She was a creature of emotional theater, and she demanded a final stage. She sent a press release to the Cedar Heights newspaper. She organized a public family intervention on the steps of the local town hall. She invited the media. She invited her church. She invited anyone who would listen. Her statement was a masterpiece of narcissistic delusion. A family, torn apart by a painful misunderstanding, seeks only to heal. We invite my sister, Lila Sanchez, to meet us in the light of day, to put aside the anger and the lawyers, and to finally allow us to forgive her. We are ready to be a family again. They were going to forgive me. Karis called me, his voice tight. Lila, it's a circus. It's a pathetic, amateurish trap. You are under no obligation to go. I looked at the live feed from my father's new shop. I saw him laughing with a customer. He was safe. He was free. I had already won the war. No, Karis, I said. It's not a trap. It's a stage. And she's invited the exact audience I need. Book my flight and bring the notary. I arrived on the steps of the Cedar Heights Town Hall on a Tuesday morning. It was exactly as pathetic as I'd imagined. A single news van from the local channel, maybe 20 onlookers, mostly from Lorraine's old church group, looking confused and cold, and on the steps, behind a rented podium, stood the three of them, Lorraine, looking frail and gray, Gavin, in a cheap suit, his face sullen, and Brielle, at the microphone, performing her heart out, tears streaming down her face as she spoke about healing and letting go of anger. They did not think I would come. I walked up the center aisle, flanked by Karis on my right and a 6'5" private security guard on my left. Brielle stopped, mid-sentence, her mouth fell open, the news camera, sensing the real story, swung directly onto me. Lila, Brielle cried, her voice thick with manufactured relief. She started to rush toward me, her arms open for an embrace. Stop, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was amplified. I was wearing my own microphone, recording everything. Stay right there. My security guard took one step forward. She froze. You wanted a public meeting, Brielle, I said, walking slowly toward the podium. You have one. You wanted to talk about the truth. Let's... Karis, moving with precision, stepped up to the local news van. He handed the technician a simple, black USB drive. My client has requested that you play this. It's the painful misunderstanding she would like to discuss. You can't do that, Gavin sputtered, starting to move. But Karis just looked at him, and the technician, smelling a real story, plugged in the drive. They had a small PA system set up. A moment later, my voice, clear and amplified, cut through the morning air. This is a private, secured property. You are trespassing. All audio and video are being recorded. The crowd murmured. Brielle's face went white. Then, Gavin's reedy, pathetic whisper filled the air. My name is Gavin Pierce. I used it to secure the loan. My voice. You forged my name. Say it. Gavin's voice. Yes. Then, Brielle's scream, loud and ugly. Fine, I set up the GoFundMe. Is that what you want to hear? I embellished. We needed the money. You had so much. The crowd went dead silent. Lorraine looked like she was going to be sick. I let the audio play for 1 full minute, the full confession. Then I nodded to Karis. He signaled the technician, who cut the feed. I walked up to the podium and took the microphone from Brielle's limp, trembling hand. That, I said to the crowd, was at 2:11 in the morning, 3 weeks ago. That was my family, after they drove 2,000 miles to the house I built specifically to catch them. That was not a misunderstanding. That was felony fraud. Confessed. I turned to face them. Karis stepped forward and placed a thick bound document on the podium, a final settlement agreement. You wanted to end this, I said, my voice ice cold. Here is the end. I looked at Gavin. The civil suit is proceeding, but I have not yet filed my formal complaint with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, the one that will permanently revoke your licenses and ensure you can never work in finance, in any state, for the rest of your life. I looked at them all. This is a full, notarized confession. This is a binding repayment schedule for every cent you stole, including the $62,000 and the $19,000 from the GoFundMe. You will sign it, right here, right now, in front of this camera and this notary. Karis gestured to a woman in the front row, who stepped forward and set her official notary stamp on the podium. You sign this, I commanded. You adhere to every single payment, and you never speak my name in public again. You do that, and the FINRA complaint might stay on my lawyer's desk. You hesitate, and I file it this afternoon. Lorraine burst into a real, racking sob. Lila, no, please, we're your family. You can't. She reached for me, her hands grasping, trying to pull me into a hug. I took a sharp, physical step back, away from her touch. Do not, I ordered. Touch me. My security guard put a hand on her shoulder, gently but firmly pressing her back. Brielle, shaking so hard she could barely see, grabbed the pen. She just wanted it to be over. She scribbled her name. Gavin just stood there, paralyzed. He looked at the camera. He looked at the crowd. He was a man with no moves left, his entire life evaporating in the morning sun. A voice called out from the back of the crowd, clear and strong. Son, choose. It was Arthur, my father. He was standing by the news van, his arms crossed, wearing his white sandwich shop coat. Gavin stared at him. He looked at the pen. He looked at his future. He grabbed the pen, his hand shaking, and he signed. Karras took the document. He handed it to the notary, who stamped each page with a heavy, final thud. Karras took the notarized copy, put it in his briefcase, and nodded to a court clerk he had arranged to be present. The clerk took the document and walked it across the street and into the courthouse to be filed. It was done. I looked at my mother. Her face was a ruin of tears and utter confusion. She was a ghost. I don't hate you, I said, my voice quiet, just for her. But the microphone caught it anyway. I just stopped paying for you. Goodbye, Lorraine. I turned. I did not look back. Karras and my guard flanked me as I walked through the silent crowd and got into the car. As we drove to the airport, my secure phone buzzed. It was a push notification, a live video feed I had requested. It was from the discreet camera I had installed across the street from my father's new shop. The feed was silent, but it showed Arthur's sandwiches. It was noon. The line was out the door. The grand opening sign was still up, covered in congratulatory postcards from the community. My father was inside, laughing with a customer, handing them a sandwich. He was safe. He was thriving. The system I had built for him was holding. I flew back to California. I did not go to the decoy house at 1480 Marin Ridge. I drove to my real home, the condo. I walked through the lobby, past the building's security, and took the elevator to the 17th floor. I entered my apartment, the door sealing shut with the quiet hiss of its biometric locks. I sat at my real command center. It was smaller, cleaner. I opened the control panel for the decoy house, 20 miles away. I looked at the system status. All green. All active. The bollards were armed. The cameras were recording. The seismic sensors were online. It had done its job. It was a beautiful, perfect trap. I moved my mouse to the master control icon. Deactivate Sentinel North Decoy 1. I clicked it, on the screen, one by one. The 4 camera feeds from the decoy house went black. The audio log flatlined. The sensors went offline. When the screen went black, I knew the family and the storm was finally outside the gate. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are tuning in from, so please comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Make sure you subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this journey.